I remember from my own experience learning jazz that coming to grips with changes was one of the hardest steps to take. Certainly something that seems to interest you guys. So, what if I was to say that there's a foolproof exercise that if you practice it, means you never have to ask the question, what do I play on this tune ever again? Watch the end of this video to learn how 5 minutes a day of simple practice can be used to crack the intricacies of basically any set of changes. Hi everybody, welcome to Jazz Guitar Scrapbook. So today we're going to talk about this very simple Barry Harris exercise called the scale outline. Does what it says on the tin. Okay, so the thing about Barry Harris discourse on YouTube is everybody gets obsessed with the 8-note scales and all of that. But actually, we use 7-note scales quite a bit. And scales for Barry Harris were the root basically of all jazz language, harmonies, everything. So he was very into scales. Not everybody is, to be fair. But I think that even if you're not really into scales, practicing this exercise I'm about to teach you will really help you find the notes under your fingers much more easily through any given tune. So just a quick word about this. This isn't going to really sound like music. It's going to sound like an exercise because it is an exercise. However, I promise if you try this yourself, it will probably help you. I mean, it certainly helped me. And we're going to start with a 3-chord version of a 12-bar jazz blues. So we're going to go 4 bars of B flat 7. Sorry about the key if you're not used to it. And I mean, horn players are in charge. What can I say? 2 bars of B flat 7. 2 bars of B flat 7 again. So 1, 4 bars. 4 for 2 bars. 1 for 2 bars. And then F7, 5 for 2 bars. In this version, we don't go to B flat 7. We go straight back to B flat 7 for a bar, and then back to F7 for a bar. By the way, bar is the English way of saying measure. Sorry if that's confusing. I just say bar. Okay, right. So the rule we're going to use is this. If the chord lasts for 1 measure, or bar, we play the scale up to the 7th. A lot of times people are encouraged to practice scales up to the root, but this has an advantage which we'll see in a second. So we just practice up to the 7th. This also has the benefit of us going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, which gives us the chord tones on the beat. Now, if it lasts for 2 bars, we're going to go up and down to the 7th. Up. Okay. This is a very good way of really strongly outlining the basic chord tones using a scale. One thing is you're going to need to get good at 1-octave scale positions, and I do talk about them in this video, which will appear above me in a puff of YouTube magic. So go and check that out. I had to practice this stuff before I was able to keep up with it. So these little 1-octave, or well, really up to the 7th and down again shapes are quite small compared to your normal sort of full positions. And that can take a little bit of getting used to. But, you know, you can start slow. So we're going to go back to our 12-bar blues, and we're going to run these scales. So we have 4 bars to start off with on B flat 7. So we're just going to use the up and down thing twice. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. That's 4 bars. And then we're going to do it once on the E flat 7. 1 and 2 and 3. Okay. Then we're going to go back to the B flat 7 and do it just once. Okay, then we're going to do the F7 once. When I say once, it means 2 bars, right? Up and down, 2 measures. And then 1 measure of that, so just up, and then 1 measure of that, just up. Okay, so I'm going to play it all the way through in time now so you can hear it. So you might well be listening to that and going like, well, that's the most boring thing ever. Why would I play that? And that's kind of the point. It just gives you the basic chord tones really squarely on the beat, and it doesn't really sound like jazz, and that's fine. So a couple of things. It's really good to practice these in different positions. So let's practice it down here. E flat 7. Back to B flat. F7. You might also want to play these things in different octaves. So, for instance, maybe the E flat 7 and the F7 could go up an octave. Probably useful if you want to solo. So let's go to rhythm changes now. There's a lot of versions of rhythm changes floating around. The one I'm going to use today is quite simple. We're just going to start on a B flat 6 for a bar, 2-5 for 1 bar, C minor F7. Happens again, and then 2-5 to E flat 7, and then that's a B flat. Dead simple. Now we're going to use a rule which Barry Harris used, which was to sort of lump the 2 and the 5 in together. So in this case, we're going to see the 2 chord as being a sort of extension or suspension, I guess, of the dominant chord. So instead of having the C minor 7, F7 and putting separate scales on both of those chords, what we'll actually do is we'll just amalgamate them together into F7 and just play the F7 scale for a bar in this case. Same thing for the F minor 7, B flat 7, it's just a bar of B flat 7 scale. Okay, and if we put this together, I'll just talk you through the whole thing. So B flat major, F7, B flat major again, F7, B flat 7, E flat 7, and it's B flat major, F7. Okay, so I'll do that in a different position without me talking. So we'll add a little bit of complexity to that. It's very basic. So we're going to add in a G7 in bar 3. And the way we're going to do this is quite clever. Let's go through the steps. So we're going to start off with our B flat major. Instead of playing it up like that, we're going to play it down. Starting with 7th, so we still get the major 7th chord tones on the beat. Okay, so the whole thing will sound like this. Up, up, down, up. Okay, now instead of going down to the B flat, the 1 of the B flat major scale, we're going to use the 3rd of G7, which is a B, raised by a half step. That gives you that sound. Beautiful, isn't it? So simple, just one note. So our exercise sounds like this now. And we go to... But again, with that one, you could play it down, go down to the E, so the E flat. That gives you the sound of the E flat. So it gives you the sound of the E diminished chord. That's not something that you have to do, but it is also a nice feature. Okay? So, and then back. So the whole thing all the way through goes like this. Obviously practice this with a metronome as well, you know, make sure you aren't speeding up or anything. I'm probably speeding up. But all that sort of stuff is you know, great to sort of lock down with a metronome, especially at the beginning of a practice session. As I say, you don't really need to do more than 5 minutes of this stuff. Beautiful, this B thing, so we can, you know, eventually... Now that's me running the scale down from the 5th this time. Up a diminished 7th. And then playing an enclosure and then a descending arpeggio, all this kind of stuff. This is all stuff which is probably going to be in a different video. I just want to show you again how this can be used to generate music, you know. Lastly, we're going to see how we can map more complex tunes with faster chord changes that we can't chunk down in the same way. So changes that sort of move more rapidly than once a bar. Okay, so this is how we worked on Half Nelson in class. Now, we'll talk about the rest of Half Nelson in a second. The mapping of it's fairly straightforward if you followed the rules earlier. And there will be a handout that you can get from my Ko-fi, or Ko-fi, whatever it's called, with, I think, 10 jam session standards mapped out in this way. So please get that and fund my trip to get my hair cut. So let's just focus on the tricky bit, which is the last couple of bars. We have this thing called a Tad Dameron turnaround, and in its simplest form it goes C major 7th, E flat major 7th, A flat major 7th, D flat major 7th, C. Now this isn't diatonic, it doesn't all belong to the same key. So that means we can't chunk it down to just one scale. We're going to have to map it a little bit more granularly. Is that a word? Granularly? We're going to have to map it in a more granular way, okay? So this is the way that Barry taught it to me. On each chord, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 5. Okay, so it's like the first 4 notes of the major pentatonic scale. These are sometimes called tetrachords in the jazz education world. And I've actually got 2 more videos that feature them. One's on Inner Urge and the other one's on Giant Steps. So you can check those out, and I talk about those there as well with regards to Adam Rogers' solo on Inner Urge, which is a great solo. But this is something that Barry Harris taught, as well as more mainstream jazz educators. So it's interesting that it came up. And it's just a very, very simple way of outlining a chord. Doesn't matter, major, minor, dominant, whatever. You can always get a 1, 2, 3, 5. And in this case, we go 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, 3, 5. And resolve like that. I like to go down to the 5th to get back to C major. So we can make that a little bit more sensible in terms of the positions. So let's try this. Or up here maybe. Always try more than one position, as many positions as you can manage, and obviously practice slowly at the beginning. I'm just going to quickly talk you through the outline for the rest of the tune. We're using some of the same logic again. We're using the chunking the 2 5s down to the 5s thing, for instance, quite a bit here. It goes 2 bars of C major, 2 bars of B flat 7, 2 bars of C major again. Okay, 1 bar of E7, 1 bar of E flat, A flat, major. It's 2 bars of D7, 2 bars of G7. Then we have our tetrachord thing. Alright, I'll try and play it through in time. And there you go. So there are ways we can develop this further. You can use whatever chord scales you like, for instance, melodic minor, so on and so forth. If you're a Barry Harris devotee, maybe things like the minor 6th diminished. So for instance, instead of playing E7 there, you can play B flat minor 6th diminished. Or if you prefer like the melodic minor. In all cases, we just go up to the 7th, or in the case of the minor 6th diminished, the 6th, and then down again, right? And that gives you the chord outline. You could try a tritone substitution instead of the vanilla harmony. So for instance, in the blues, you could go tritone, then E flat 7, and then B flat 7, and then F7. So I'm using tritone substitutions there of the whole scale, and that can add extra colour and sort of direction and interest to your harmony. You can apply any bebop language that's appropriate to the scale, added note rules scales, or bebop scales as they're sometimes known. But the main thing is that you now have the notes of a tune under your fingers, and that's incredibly helpful. It was very helpful to me. So 5 minutes of this a day, as I say, this sort of quite strict drill can really bring you a lot of benefits. Anyway, as I say, download my handout to find 10 common jam session jazz standards mapped out in this way in full, and I hope that's useful to you, as it was to me. And I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.